What you doing? Taking a sun bath? Taking a bath in the sun?
Okay. All right. So today we're going to be talking about album art. Let's do it. The first album art we have on screen here is Progression. Progression was our demo. We wrote it in 2011 and it was released in 2012 or 13, somewhere in there. I think it was 12. And the album art is made by Caspro, the musician. Check him out on Spotify. He makes really cool like synthwave, outrun. I don't know the really subgenres of electronic music, but that's the kind of music he makes, and it's fantastic. We actually did a collaboration with him in, I think it was 2015 or 16. No, it had to be after that, 2018. He took a bunch of the Almanac music and he turned it into a synthwave album. It's called Kardashev. Go check it out. Anyways, so he made this for us, and basically we had a conversation, he and I, where he said, hey, I'm getting into graphic arts and I'd like to try and make an album art for your guys' demo because you reached out to social media and said, hey, we'd love to work with somebody for the album art. So he didn't really have like a graphic art sort of profile, portfolio. He wasn't really known for his graphic arts. He was more known for his music, even back then. And so it was kind of like just one of those things where, you have a friend who has a skill, and so you ask them to do the artwork. So he did this. We explained the concept to him, the Kardashev scale. We sent him the Wikipedia article, basically. And we said, basically, we just need something that looks sci-fi and feels a little bit like in the sci-fi metal sort of category. Now, I don't know if he took inspiration from bands like Meshina, but if he did, I love it. So this is what he came up with. I'm not sure how he made it. I don't know what medium was used. I don't know really anything about it. I just am grateful that he was there to make it for us. So this is this album, Progression. All right, so next up is Excipio. This album came out in 2013, I'm pretty sure. And this was after we wrote our demo. We thought to ourselves, how cool would it be to write a record that focuses on some characters within the setting of the Kardashev scale universe. And this would have been in the tier 2 part of the universe. So it would have been something like humanity in real life right now is like a 0.6 on the Kardashev scale. And what that means is that we are currently still using non-renewable energy in order to advance our civilization on a technological level. You can do your own research on this. There's a lot of sci-fi, but there's also a lot of science that measures against this science fiction sort of scale. And that science is basically comparing our use of fossil fuels and other non-renewable energies compared to the absolute abundance of renewable energies that we should be leveraging to power our cities, to power our vehicles, but we don't. And it's because that there's not a whole lot of money in it. Talk about big oil and big gas and whatever. I don't get into that kind of stuff, but that's the comparison. So instead of using like geothermal, kinetic wave energy, solar energy, wind energy, instead of using these renewable types to advance us into a type 1 civilization, we're not there yet. So we're still below the 1.0 category. This album, Excipio, focuses on what our civilization would look like if we actually achieved not just a tier 1, but we were somewhere between tier 1 and tier 2. Right? That's the idea. So in order for a civilization to pass tier 1, they need to harness the entire planet's renewable energies. Some of the ones I've mentioned, and then probably a lot more I don't know about. In order for a civilization to hit a type 2 category, they have to harness all 100% of the energy of their local star and their planet. So in this example, this would be something like a Dyson sphere. A Dyson sphere is this science fiction superstructure that has photovoltaic panels as a sphere facing inside where the sun would be. So imagine the sun, and then imagine some distance from the sun, a big shield is built around the sun. And that shield's job is to not just encompass it, but to have solar panels on the inside of the sphere that capture the entire circumference of the sun's energy output. This could be thermal energy through heat. This could be photo energy through photons, right? The reason that we can see light. Solar panels capture light, turn it into energy. It would be that. And if that was 100% efficient, you'd officially be a Type 2 civilization. This album, I keep pointing this way, it's this way. This album's story focuses on a civilization that is on a Dyson station. There's actually lyrical references to DS Alpha 12389. This means Dyson Sphere Alpha hyphen quadrant 123 section 89. That's kind of where we come up with these numbers and these sequences. And I might be a little bit wrong in my details. This was over 10 years ago. Mark can clarify, but he won't. So that's kind of what this album is about. It's a story about characters in a Type 2 civilization on a Dyson sphere who find a single cell, right? Microscopic. I'm doing this, but it's microscopic. A single cell floating through space. Maybe their radars or their sonars or their detectors or whatever find it, and they go grab it wanting to know what it is, because it's a bioorganic cell, right? It's an organic cell. They capture it, bring it back to the space station, DS Alpha 12389. They bring it back there, and the scientists say, hey, we need to grow this in a laboratory to see what the species is, because it could be a new species. We might not be alone in the universe, right? It's kind of answering that question. But of course, the military part of this civilization, right? Super future humans. The military part of it is saying, no way. What if it's like a xenomorph? Or what if it's like some crazy thing that we don't have control of and it winds up killing everyone? And the scientists are like, ugh, typical bureaucracy, right? So as the album progresses, we get about halfway through and we enter a song that's called Multitudes of Life. I think that's track 2, actually, maybe track 3. Track 2, Multitudes of Life, is the conversation between the scientist and the military person, whatever. There is a dialogue there where the scientist says, we have an obligation to bring this cell to fruition, and the military people say, authorization denied. If you go listen, those are very similar to the lyrics, but that's the conversation where they say, hey, we're not going to let you do this. Well, the scientists say, we don't care what you think. We need to advance science, so we're doing it. So they put it in a laboratory, probably like a petri dish or something. We don't go into this detail, but they go into the laboratory and they give the single cell all of the nutrition and the perfect ideal growing environment that it needs. And in less than 1 day, it grows from a single cell all the way up to a fully fledged creature like a person, which we describe as humanoid, so it looks similar to humans. But they're like pale and white, a little bit shorter in stature, and they don't have much hair. That's just kind of the sort of description that we've landed on after 10 years of developing the story. So this is the character you would know as the Traveler. And in the band, we refer to this character as Kent. Kent is short from the trajectory of where the cell was coming from when they found it, and it was coming directly from Alpha Centauri, and sometimes it's pronounced Alpha Kentauri, so we called the character Kent. Now you know. So this album was written about that character coming to life, being born. When it was born, similar to a series like Star Trek, the character makes a device called the Kiliagon, which is like this super fantastically powerful, way beyond the knowledge of the humans that are going to try and control it. It's this device that lets you basically wormhole from one side of the universe to another. Really, this on the Kardashev scale, this should fall in the tier 3 category of technology. But remember, this is a tier 2 civilization. So Kent is grown, we call it born. Kent is born in Multitudes of Life. Then he creates the Kiliagon as a way of thanking humanity for bringing him to life. And that's what this picture is. This is our artist interpretation of the Kiliagon. It is a 1,000-sided object, which is a philosophical sort of conundrum in the mind. It's a 1,000-sided object that creates a wormhole from one side of the universe to another, whatever. So that's the Kilyagon. Kent takes the Kilyagon. He basically builds it, gives it to humanity, and he's like, anyways, guys, I'm out, because he's kind of like a deity. He's like super powerful, super knowledgeable. So he builds it as a thank you, and he leaves using it. He uses this. This is going to come back. So here we go. So he leaves. Okay, that's what this album artwork is about. Album artwork. I keep pointing the wrong way. That's what this album artwork is about. Let's move on to the next album. Okay. This is Iota. Now, up until this point, Progression and Excipio are both contained in the same universe of lyrical lore. It's the same story following itself. This is the first song that we started where it had nothing to do with the lore of Kardashev. We call it the Kardashev mythos. That's how we refer to it. When Mark and I are talking, we'll say, oh yeah, is this album part of the Kardashev mythos? And if we say yes, then we have all this rich history of album lore to work with. If we say no, then Mark is just responsible for whatever he wants to talk about for that song or that album. So Iota is not part of the Kardashev mythos, but this artwork was made by our bass player, Chris, who also did Excipio's artwork, by the way. But this artwork didn't come along until we filmed a music video. The order of events was we recorded Iota. We knew it was going to be a standalone single, not part of like an album or even the Kardashev lore, but we didn't have an artwork for it yet. The name comes from the idea that people are insignificant, but they don't realize this because we can't see beyond ourselves, even as a species. Right? Most people have this grandiose idea that humans are the most important thing in the universe. Some people even maybe hold the belief that the universe was created for humans to explore, kind of like a sandbox or something, right? And the point of this song lyrically was to basically say, no, that's not true. Humans are not significant. And we can use examples of how we can look at it just from like, what's a good one? Like biomass. There's more mass of bugs on the earth than there is mass of humans on the earth. So wouldn't that be the dominant species through the lens of which has more physical mass? Or how about bacteria? That's sort of the War of the Worlds argument, is that when the aliens arrived on Earth, they started like taking the humans as cattle and, using them for fuel. But ultimately, the humans didn't defeat the aliens. Bacteria did. So bacteria should be the dominant species. So it just kind of, you can argue it to death, but this song was arguing that humans are not significant. We're cool, we're valuable, but we are not actually significant on a galactic scale. So that's Iota. The artwork was made during the music video. Our bass player, Chris, was the actor of the music video. He's the only person in that video. And he actually does, with charcoal and erasers on a canvas, he makes this piece of art. And he actually had to make two of them. One of them was ripped up, which you can see in the music video. So he had to do this whole canvas in black and then use, I think it was like 20 erasers, like really high grade erasers from an art supply, to erase everything down to this one shape, this Iota shape here, on a big canvas. It was like maybe like a 3 by 3 feet by 3 feet, 1 meter, something like that. He had to erase it down and then they ripped it up. Well, then the second half of the video is him redoing it, doing it again. And this is a sort of allegory of like self-realization and self-doubt. So he has to do it again. And the second canvas that he charcoaled and then erased down to this is the photo we took and put it on the single release. And actually our buddy Rob, who was a lifelong supporter of Kardashev, we gifted this to him back in like 2018 or something. We gave him the original canvas with this art. So that's why Iota looks like that, and that's where it comes from. And yeah, that's basically everything about Iota. This is Peripety. Peripety is not, again, it is not part of the Kardashev mythos. It does not belong to the science fiction conversation of our history. This is a standalone album that also has nothing to do with Iota. It's similar in themes. They were being written and released around the same time. Actually, I think Iota was being written at the same time. Excuse me. I think it was being written at about the same time that Excipio was being written and released, and we just decided to make it a standalone song. But Iota came out before we started writing Peripety. Now, Peripety, the album artwork is just a blank canvas with the word Kardashev and Peripety on it. And thematically, this is important because the sort of philosophical perspective on the album Peripety, lyrically speaking, is about what it means to become aware of the world around you and yourself. So if you think about this from like a really high level, most people, when they are born, they go through developmental stages, and we can use babies as an example. At a certain period of time, babies don't have this cognitive development called object permanence. This is why peekaboo is so effective on them. When you hide your face, you literally, from their perspective, stop existing. You're like Thanos snapped, gone, right? But after a certain point, the brain creates the neural pathways to know the difference between gone from existence and obstructed visually, like visual obstruction. If I cover my face, you know I'm still behind my hands. Also, the question is, where are the hands coming from? They're attached to the body with the face. Okay, if you take that concept and you sort of blow it up into a bigger philosophy, the idea of Peripety is going from ignorance to awareness. And the title Peripety comes from, and some of the subject matter comes from, a TED Talk that was done by Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs. If you guys are interested, Google this, Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe TED Talk. He talks about how in theater, there is this poignant moment in MIDI theater productions that is called Peripety. And that's actually the name of a character. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not a theater nerd, but I'm telling you what I remember. There's a character called Peripety, and this is Greek for meaning to become aware. Like, it's like an epiphany, right? All of a sudden it's like, oh, awareness hits you. You find it. So the album is called Peripety because the album is about what it means to go from ignorance, the peekaboo, to awareness. Oh, that person is just behind their hands. Their hands are just in front of their face. They're not gone completely, right? Once you're aware of that concept, you understand that Peripety means the moment of awareness. So, this album artwork is a blank canvas because the idea, the allegory of the artwork is that everybody is a blank canvas. Everything is a blank canvas, and either the universe or if you're spiritually inclined, you think it's God's will, or maybe you're more astrologically inclined, and so you say like the universe itself physically is like stepping in and manifesting your destiny, like whatever. But the idea of the blank canvas is the allegory for the album. It starts with tenebris, which is a Latin word that means absolute darkness, and it goes to lux, which is a Latin word that means absolute brightness. And that's the idea. Darkness, you know you can see nothing, right? The peekaboo is covering your eyes, you have no awareness, all the way to lux. And there's the gradient of words in between all of those, right? You have tenebris, sopor, somnium, somnus, aurora, blah, 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 all the way down the line, which means that you are gradually filling with light. You are filling with knowledge and awareness. So the blank canvas, again, done by our bass player, Chris, is the allegory for what it means to go from nothing to everything in that regard. Okay, after Peripety, we had the Almanac. This here was a photo taken by our bass player, Chris. He was the artistic one of the group, if you can't tell. He took this photo when we were filming the music video for, I think it was Beyond Sun and Moon. Come on, you want to be in the video? No, she's hungry. He took this photo in the same river or the same general area that Mark's white hand from the Beyond Sun and Moon music video was in the water and feeling the earth and touching the leaves, and from all of that, this photo comes. So this is, he did some photo manipulation, some color manipulation, and obviously we had to add the text and the box in there. But he did all of this, and we decided that this was a good representation of sort of life as it feels, right? Which this feels very moody. This was kind of like the shoegaze sort of mindset, maybe. We were looking for a moody album cover that would also be kind of elegant and kind of lovely. And this is what he landed on, and the rest of us signed off on. But the majority of the CD and the other visual arts come from the music video location and the equipment that we brought with us. He was able to capture this kind of photo and then adjust it for the purpose of the album. And just to remind you, the Almanac is the next Kardashev mythos. So from an album artwork's perspective, they don't really connect too much visually. But if you think about progression, Excipio, and now the Almanac, the story could kind of feel like we see a Dyson sphere, and we're talking about civilizations and their ability to consume and use power. Then we see the Kiliagon, which is a direct result of a tier 1.5-ish civilization getting technology that is well over their heads, way over their heads, the Kiliagon. And then if we skip the Iota and Peripety, we now land at the Almanac. And this represents what happens immediately after Kent, the traveler, steps into the Kiliagon. Where does he go? Where does he go, right? That's a question. Once you know he uses the Kiliagon to go somewhere in the universe, the question becomes, well, where did he go? The Almanac is that answer. This is where he goes. Where does he wind up? He winds up on some planet. Are there people there? I don't know. But he definitely sees a fawn. He definitely experiences snow and the ocean, and he watches seeds grow into trees and oceans carve into the earth. He sees all of these things because he can move in and out of time at will, right? That's the kind of creature we created to tell this story. So the Almanac, this artwork, is sort of representative of the next step of where Kent arrives. So that's the Almanac. We have the Bearing of Shadows. This is the first album that we did with Carl. You might know him as Yogurt. This is the first album we did with him. And he did a fantastic job, so much so that we went back for, I think, 2 more albums, maybe 3. But here it is. This is The Bearing of Shadows. After we wrote the Almanac, we sort of experienced a big sonic change in our sound. Mark sang for the first time on the Almanac. We experienced the sort of death gaze sound that we ultimately landed on, and we thought to ourselves, dude, that is a super moody album, the Almanac. It's riffy, but it feels bigger than life. It has these really big, powerful post-rock-esque moments. There are moments when you can kind of get lost in the drone of it, which is the sort of gaze of the whole thing. And at this time, the political atmosphere of the world was particularly rough. For those of you who were there, you would remember that the president at the time was Donald Trump. A lot of minority groups were feeling oppressed. There was a lot of infighting in the world where people couldn't, for whatever reason, find any common ground no matter what. Their main focus in altercations was identifying their differences rather than sort of looking for de-escalating and looking for the similarities between them. You know, as an example, I've never experienced this directly, but as an example, if 2 people were to get in an altercation for some reason, they might give each other the benefit of the doubt. They might say, hey, really sorry, I'm not sure if you did that on purpose, but I'm going to go my way, you go your way, you know, good luck. Instead, they try to kind of puff out their feathers, pull their chest up, and be like the dominant person. And they want to win, right? They have this winner mentality, like they can't back down, even if it would be best for everybody involved. So through that political lens and that cultural lens, we came to this concept, Mark rather, but we all talk about it. Mark came to this concept of how hard is it to empathize with people that you think you have no way to empathize with? Why is it so hard to express empathy? Why does this challenge exist, and why is it so hard for us to overcome? So he came up with a series of stories. I think it's 4 or 5, I can't remember. He came up with a number of stories that illustrate a very emotional moment in life that most people will go through. And if they're not going to go through it, maybe they can see themselves through the lens of the lyrics, through the lens of the emotions of the album. And so if you look at the tracks on this album, A Frame of Light is a story about a person coming home to a beloved home and finding a family member has taken their own life and what that would feel like. That is what the lyrics of this song are about. And as it's pretty obvious at this point, this is not part of the Kardashev mythos. This is a standalone album. So that's what that song's kind of about. It's exploring what that emotionally would probably feel like and how it doesn't seem so hard to recognize that you've lost something that you love dearly and it's never coming back. And so from this point forward, all you have is memories. The second track on that album is Snow Sleep. What would it feel like to be a child abandoned by their family? What would it feel like to feel like what kind of emotions and logical expressions would a child go through thinking that they had deserved abandonment, thinking that they had done something wrong, so wrong that their family wants nothing to do with them anymore, almost like they failed at like a video game where you only get one chance to try and succeed, and you've never played the game before, and you don't even have all the best items to try and get through the game with. But then for the game to just be like, oh yeah, you never get to play this game again. It's like, where is the fairness, right? The game comparison's a bad strategy, but I'm a streamer, so I think about a lot of game analogies, or I try to. What would that feel like to be abandoned by people you love? That's kind of the concept. The third song in there is, I'm pretty sure it's Torch Passing. What is it like to deal with the passing of a father or a mother? We all must go through this. Unless we don't have a father or a mother, then okay, that's an outlier. Kind of like Snow Sleep, right? Not everybody's going to have a child, but you still know what it's like to be abandoned or to be told, I don't want to talk to you anymore, or you're not welcome in our group. Maybe you didn't even receive like the group invite to go to the movies on Saturday. That can give feelings of abandonment, of isolation. So, going back to the third song here, Torch Passing, giving a parent permission to die is like a philosophical lens that he uses to tell the story of Torch Passing. What is it like to permit someone in your life to not worry about leaving you behind? To say to them, go without me, it's okay, I will be okay. That's Torch Passing. And then the final song in that, the fourth song, is Heartache. Heartache is, of all of these scenarios, death is of the most powerful. Probably. He must have just had lunch. And of that, we talk about heartache, where the person you have picked out of all the people you've ever met in your life, you have chosen them to basically go on and play life in co-op mode. And maybe even you have children with this person. In doing that, the world is chaos. And what if the world takes them from you in the form of, say, like an automobile accident. And you are left behind to deal with the loss of your loved one and to raise the children who remain with you, to raise them on your own in the shadow of the loved one who is now gone. And so you are torn between the idea of, I want to be with my partner, but I also want to raise the children. So the difficulty of being in that position is the meaning of that song. All of that is to say that this album and the artwork is representative of the idea of like a solemn sorrow. Sorry for the alliteration, but you have this woman character who is veiled, right? They have a hood on and they're holding flowers. And given the position that they are in, they seem like they're standing upright with their eyes closed. But if you change your orientation, maybe they're laying on their back and they're possibly dead, sleeping, but let's go more literal here, dead, and they're holding the bouquet of flowers as they are lying in, say, like a coffin. We also have the orange circle going around the character's head, which is allusion. There's a difference between the I and the A. It is an allusion to, I think it's like medieval Catholic art. When you'd see the big halo around Jesus and the disciples, it's an allusion to that, which implies that this person is either of holiness or maybe they are a spirit. Maybe this person has died and now they have a halo, which implies afterlife. We chose to stay away from the Judeo-Christian themes as much as possible because that's just not anybody in the band's vibe. But the allusion to the artworks from those time periods is very beautiful and it has a lot of power. And so when we were talking with Carl, we said, hey, draw whatever you want, but here's the theme of the album. And this is what he landed on. So again, this album, Iota and Peripety, have nothing to do with the Kardashev mythos. These are all standalone. Liminal Rite is, it's kind of similar to Peripety in that it's a full-length album that has nothing to do with the Kardashev mythos, but it's also Mark as a poet, lyricist, singer. It's also him sort of navigating a story through the sonic atmosphere of Liminal Rite as a musical piece, right? And what I mean by that is we deliver the album to him oftentimes. He's a part of the album creation process, but he kind of keeps his distance until the whole thing is done, like composed. No more edits are going to be made. And then we give it to him as like an offering. And then he goes through and he writes all the lyrics and the story. And he tells us, he's like, hey guys, here's like the sonic vibe. Here's like the shades of color I see happening in these songs. And by the time here we get to this like conflict and then a resolution, he's very like story and poetry oriented in his interpretations. So he wrote the story around an elderly man who is late in life, returning to his childhood home. Oh, I need to put the album art up. What am I doing? I'm so sorry. Album art. Liminal Rite. Right there. And we're gonna do that. We're gonna do the full art piece. We're not gonna do the. Well, no, we're talking about album covers. So let's do the album cover. There it is. Okay, so this story is about an elderly man who's late in his life, very late, we're talking like maybe 70s, 80s, returning to his childhood home where he grew up. And he's not in a good mentally sound place. He's not in a mentally fit perspective. This guy has like been through a lot. He has a lot of mental deterioration. He has a lot of physiological deterioration. He's sort of regretting a lot of decisions that took place in his life. And somehow he has found the wherewithal to reflect on some experiences as he returns to his childhood home. And many of those experiences are being triggered by him interacting with physical objects around the home. So if we look at Liminal Rite, kind of from front to back. By the way, this is the old man. We had Yogurt recommend us. Yogurt. We had Carl, the artist from the Bearing of Shadows. We had him recommend us somebody who could paint. We really wanted a painting for this one because painting of a person is powerful. If you think about, let me ask you this question, and seriously think about it. Who do you know that has a painting of themselves or has been painted before, and maybe they don't own the painting, but it's somewhere else? It's usually just models. It's just subjects for people to learn how to paint oftentimes. But historically, this is what we had before photography. And so like people who could afford a painter, hey buddy, people who could afford a painter, asked them to capture their likeness for the purpose of existing beyond their own life, right? Having like a remembrance of that person actually existed and they look really wealthy. Think about any of the paintings of people you've seen. That's probably the category it sort of fell in, right? So we wanted this to be a painting of a man who was old because the story was about an elderly man. And we got a bunch of those from Faith. She's an incredible artist. The original paintings are at Mark's house in Arizona. They were in my studio, but when I moved to Germany, I had to leave them behind because they were too delicate. And I didn't want to ship them around to Germany. So, from the front of the album in Liminal Rite, this old man returns to his family home, and there are monologues, which Sean, our drummer, is the voice of those monologues. So when you listen to the album, that's our drummer talking, even though we want you to think it's this guy talking, right? That's the idea. He says, I'm returning to my family home, and I'm not sure what I'll find there, but I know that I have to die here. That's kind of the premise. And then you move into Silvered Shadows and Lavender Calligraphy. I'm not sure the order right now off the top of my head, but you move through all these songs because the man is physically moving through the house. He's moving in, he's looking at the basement. You know, he's looking at the cellar, he sees the door, and he reflects fondly on the memories of the cellar of ghosts, right? He goes out back and he sees the headstone of his brother who died when they were both young boys. Compost grave song. His headstone is next to where this family farm house had a compost in the backyard, and they just buried him next to it because that's what you did when you're not like a super wealthy family. And it even kind of reveals a bit of the time period, right? This might be before modern civilization, before the Industrial Revolution to a certain degree, if you really want to extrapolate that. This could be when they used to use candles for light sources. Think about like 1600s, maybe even 16 to 1700s to a certain degree. This could be the time period that this story takes place. It's probably not modern day if they buried their family member on their land. That might not be the case. So this guy goes through the entire house reflecting on these memories. And we decided to do the composition of this album art to show not just him, but a profile of him. Because we thought that would be more sort of like regal in a way. But also because his mind is so deteriorated, we asked Faith, the painter, we asked her to put these kind of swirls of like, in a way, kind of an abstract idea of his mind leaving him, right? It's like his mind is being taken into the ether, or maybe for the religious types, it's going up to heaven, whatever you want to call it. We asked her to paint that, and that's what she did. And it looks perfect. And then I framed it with the design work and put our new logo on there. We were going through a rebranding process as the band for Liminal Rite because we had signed to Metal Blade Records, and I thought it was really important that we establish ourselves as more of like a brand in a way than just a band who makes music, because we do so much more than that. So I made the logo. I had my buddy Raul make the logo for me. I helped him with it. And then he helped me come up with the design elements for this album art. And so we have Liminal Rite. And last but not least, we will talk now about Aluna. Aluna, again, was a Carl artwork. The same person who did the artwork for The Bearing of Shadows also did Aluna here. And this is what it looks like. So, I'm deciding if I want to give too much of the story away before the album releases, because I would like to put this video up as soon as possible. Whatever, we're just going to do it. All right, so here we go. If you're watching this video before April 25th, 2025, you're one of the lucky few who get to know this story before it's public. Welcome back to the Kardashev mythos. This is the first time since the Almanac that we have revisited the story of Kent, the Traveler, and the Kiliagon, and DS Alpha 12389, and the Kardashev scale, which is where we get our name from. We had our demo in 2012, we had Excipio in 2013, we had the Almanac in 2017, and now, 8 years later in 2025, we have Aluna. Aluna is the story of the very first thing that Kent experiences when he steps through the Kiliagon. At the end of the Almanac, before the epilogue, we listen to Beyond Sun and Moon. And in this story, in these lyrics, Mark sings words to the effect of, "When I returned, all the seeds had grown without me. When I returned, all the rivers, they flowed without me." And he's basically using these lyrics to illustrate how Kent, as a creature, even a super powerful one, didn't have to actually be there for life to just move on without him, right? The seeds still grew, the rivers still flowed, I don't remember what the rest of the lyrics are, the canyons were still carved, the trees ultimately grew and then fell, right? Life as a cycle continues whether humans are there or not. So there's a little bit of the flavor of Peripety in there, a little bit of the flavor of Iota, not Peripety, sorry, Iota. That flavor is kind of, dangling in the air. But this album opens with those lyrics. And we chose to have the album open with those lyrics in reverse. Mark sings them in reverse because we thought it would be an interesting way to show that the Kiliagon, from the receiver's side, looking in, watching Kent come towards them, maybe they see what's happening on the other side in reverse. They hear it in reverse. They see it in reverse. Some kind of think about like a Stargate, right? It's a big pool of water that's vertical and it opens and closes. And you can't really see through it. It's kind of obscured, but there's maybe like lights or shapes before they ultimately exit the threshold of the Stargate. Think about that kind of imagery for this. So Kent steps through the Kiliagon. My cats are being crazy. I've got one of them right here, but the other one's being a psychopath in the other room. Kent steps through the Kiliagon, and where does he wind up? He winds up at the very first spot with Aluna, which is where, bear with me, this is going to be a little bit in depth, which is where at the end of Excipio, there's a song called Continuum. In that song, humanity has reached the end of the tier 2 technological scale level. They're like a 2.99. And they're about to enter a tier 3 civilization, which means they can travel throughout the universe at will, no problem, because they have enough energy to create Kiliagons if they need to. So they send a Pathfinder program, they send a self-replicating robot that starts as a single cell. They send it in every direction imaginable from their home planet, or in this case DS Alpha 12389 and the surrounding solar system. They send these creatures, these biorobotic self-replicating creatures, across the universe. One of them is on a planet and it wakes up, it comes online, however you want to say it. They're half robot, half bio, so whatever a cyborg does, they wake up or they're born, I don't know. It wakes up and the first thing that it sees is not a desolate, barren planet. They see Kent standing in front of them. Because Kent has just stepped through the Kiliagon, and the first thing he did was step onto a foreign world where a Pathfinder has woken up. So the timeline's a little bit hard to grasp. Mark has some visuals. If you're interested in that, leave me a comment and I'll do a video on that. It's really interesting. But the timeline feels really convoluted, and that's just because we're writing in different points and different perspectives about the Kardashev mythos. But Kent steps foot on the planet. this Pathfinder wakes up, and the two of them meet. And the Pathfinder starts talking to Kent, and the two of them realize they don't speak the same language. Even though the Pathfinder comes from Earth, and Kent learned language from Earthlings in the sort of Excipio universe of the Dyson station around the planet. He learned English, but this Pathfinder speaks a different kind of language, and the two of them can't figure out how to talk to one another, and that's because one of them speaks Aluna. So this album is the conversation between two creatures that don't speak the same language, but have the same life expectations. Kent's expectations are to experience life as we do, right? You and I, we wake up every day and we go to a job and we see our family, we smile, we laugh, we tell jokes, we consume media and share that idea with other people. We experience life the way that we do. Well, so does Kent. He just does it through space-time because he's like a deity, basically. But then the Pathfinder wakes up and he's been programmed for his life. He's been programmed to self-replicate and terraform the planet he's on so that when humans inevitably arrive through generation ships or whatever, that planet is now suitable for them to populate, which would then advance them through the tier 2 to tier 3 part of the Kardashev scale. Okay. So, Aluna is a conversation between these two. On the left in this picture, you see the white hands from beyond Sun and Moon, right? Mark's hand was painted white in the music video. Well, here are the white hands, and you'll see in you either will see or you have seen our music video for Seed of the Night, where again we have that character that's fully white, not a whole lot of facial or not a whole lot of hair, not very distinct, but somewhat androgynous facial features and body features. This is Kent. This is the Traveler from the Almanac. This is the single cell that they found in multitudes of life off of Excipio that grew into being a being in a matter of 8 hours or whatever it is. That is who is on the left in this drawing. On the right, the one holding the stones and has like the filigreed armored hands, that's the Pathfinder. He's half robot and he's a cyborg. He's half genetic and half robotics. He's been programmed to self-replicate and spread the genetic code of humanity onto this planet that he arrived at. So we reached out to Carl. Sorry, let me start over. So we reached out to Carl and we said, hey, you know the Almanac. You've probably heard Excipio or Progression. We want you to do the artwork for the next album. And the concept is these two creatures meet one another and they kind of have this conversation. How long does it take? I don't know. Could be 5 minutes, could be an hour, could be a week. Does time matter to either of them? Probably not. If Kent can move through space-time at will, and the Pathfinder, whose name is Atlas, by the way, and if Atlas can be dormant and asleep on a planet for millennia before waking up and beginning the terraforming process, does time matter to either of them? So the duration of time it takes for them to converse, to learn language from one another, to discuss the philosophy of what it means to have a purpose, and whether or not you should fulfill that purpose, whether or not you should wake up tomorrow and go through the next step in your life, etc. Those sort of philosophical topics, it doesn't matter how long it takes them to talk, but we spent 8 songs worth of time, approximately 40 minutes, giving you the highlights. What did they say to one another? How did they feel? How did they act? Why did one of them try to convince the other of their perspective? Why does any of that matter? That is what Aluna is about. And as far as we know, we don't know what the next album will hold, if it's part of the Kardashev mythos or not. We're not sure yet. But right now, Aluna is about finding one's purpose and discussing what it means to make the most out of life. So, those are all of our albums in order. Those are all the album artworks, who did them, why they did them, what they represent. I think this one's the most beautiful one that we have so far. It's obviously the most detailed. It's the most intricate. It's hand drawn by Carl. He did all the filigree work. He did the logo. The Kardashev logo is actually done by Raoul back when we rebranded with Liminal Rite. And the choice of color, the gold, white, and sort of blues, gold, white, black, and blues, was part of our request to Carl, telling him that we want to have this sort of Elizabethan Baroque time period of like extravagant filigree elegance, but in a sort of brutalist sort of atmosphere. So think about like really square buildings, but they have like gold embroidery on the corners or on the edges. They have trims in bright gold. If you type in Elizabethan Baroque architecture, I know Baroque's a hard word to spell. I couldn't possibly spell it for you right now. But if you type this in, you'll see that it is often referred to as, I think it's called Russian. There's a comparison with Russia there. Russian architecture from like I think it's like 1800s or 1900s. But it's basically when you have really brutalist structures with a ton of extravagant gold leafing and filigree work. A good example of this is if you've ever seen the movie League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Captain Nemo has a car, and that car looks super sick. It kind of exists in the Elizabethan Baroque style, right? It's very functional, but it's also exaggerated. It's also ordained with like gold filigree and like hand sculpted metals. That's kind of the idea, and that's exactly what we wanted here, and that's what he delivered us. So, sorry this video has been so long, but I had a lot of thoughts to get out, and I wanted to connect the albums for you so that you understood which ones were part of this greater idea that is the Kardashev mythos, and which ones were kind of just standalone explorations of concepts from our past. So, thank you for your time today. Pud, you want to say bye? Stinky's been sitting here with me almost the whole time. Say goodbye to the people. Oh, he's like, I don't want to participate, Father. I just want to sleep. We'll see you guys next time. Take care. Have fun. Use protection. Don't die. Oh!